Deep within the repositories, you never know what you might find. There's over 3 million records held here at Queensland State Archives, filled with mystery and terror, and occasionally things you can't do on Sundays, like flying a balloon, carrying a gun, or selling ice cream. So why were so many things banned on Sunday? Sunday observance is a really old idea, possibly over 1,700 years old, when Roman Emperor Constantine issued an edict stating,
"Let all judges and all city people and all tradesmen rest upon the venerable day of the sun."
I won't go into the full edict here, but essentially it gave most people a day to rest, except for essential jobs like those done for public service. As the Roman Empire fell and the Pope held more power, there were more rules around what couldn't be done on Sundays, and breaking them could mean severe punishment. Early Sunday laws in England were part of the commands passed on from the Christian church, and over time, laws were introduced making it mandatory to attend church and to not travel outside your parish, carry on business, hold a fair or market, and eventually even gather for sports or pastimes whatsoever. People were expected to be at their local place of Christian worship. And we're the Queensland State Archives. I'm not going to give you a full ancient history lesson here, but these police reports start to make a little bit more sense. Since the colonisation of Australia, government was established inheriting certain rules and laws from England, including Sunday observance. In 1901, the Department of Justice in Queensland received a letter prepared by a solicitor on behalf of the Council of Churches in Queensland. We have the honour to inform you that we are instructed by the Council of Churches to direct your attention to the flagrant manner in which offences are committed against the Sunday Observance Act by the crying and vending of newspapers. Every Sunday in almost every part of Brisbane or its suburbs, numbers of young men and boys are to be found breaking the law in this way. May we be permitted to state that it appears to us to be beyond doubt that offenders not of age of 14 years may be convicted under Section 3 of the Act. The Council of Churches also took this discussion to the Home Secretary at the time, the Honourable Mr. Foxton. Reverend Wales stated, "If street hawking could be carried on with loud cries on a Sunday morning, it was difficult to see why the Sunday should not be open for the sale of anything else, say vegetables. There might be some who would glorify in this matter, but to the cultured and fair-minded, the thing is a nuisance. There was no reason why these papers should be sold on Sunday. It could be done just as well on Saturdays or Mondays." Mr. Foxton was doubtful whether there was a law to prevent the practice without going back a long way. They would have to go back to the time of Charles II, and there the law was very stringent. Reverend Pollock said the deputation would go away satisfied if the minister would promise that he would enforce the law as far as possible to secure rest on the day of rest. In 1901, the laws around Sunday observance were considered obsolete by some, but it's clear there was a lot of public support to keep Sunday as a day of rest and Christian worship. And if people could sell newspapers, well, what's next? Vegetables, apparently, or ice cream, a crime that could be detrimental to society itself. In a petition provided by the residents of Clayfield in Brisbane to the police, "We desire to draw your attention to the fact that a vendor of hokey pokey is in the habit of crying his wares and making sales in this neighbourhood on Sundays, timing his visits so as to meet the children from their various Sunday schools, and which we consider detrimental to the best interests of this district." And these weren't just angry citizens either. People were charged for trying to sell ice cream on Sundays, like in this report. On Sunday, the 25th of November 1928, I saw Nicholas Cholakis driving an ice cream cart along Newtown Road. I saw several children and a woman go up to the cart. I went over to the cart and said to Cholakis, "Why are you selling ice creams on a Sunday within the traffic area?" And he replied, "I am not selling them. I gave them to this lady." Unfortunately, in this case for Nicholas, the officer saw money changing hands before he approached, and the ice cream vendor was fined. So getting an ice cream in town on Sunday wasn't an option. So what did people do for fun? Ascend in a hot air balloon and parachute back down? Well, yeah, actually, but not without nearly causing a riot. In a report submitted to the Commissioner of Police by the Inspector of Bundaberg in 1890, he was asked to prevent a performance by Miss Van Tassel by the Reverend James Stewart, to which the first inspector replied no. Going on to add that Acacia Vale Gardens are at least 2 miles beyond the municipal boundary and they are not under the town's Police Act. He went on to say, "I was fully aware that a very large concourse of people, men, women and children, would be present to see the balloon ascent and the parachute descent. And knowing that a fatal accident had shortly before occurred in Brisbane at a similar function, I considered it my duty to take the necessary steps to prevent the like occurring here, and attendance myself with sufficient members of the force to keep order and prevent mishaps. There were none." In a newspaper clipping from the time, we can see that thousands potentially attended, including 500 officers and men of the Defence Force. The Reverend Stewart attended and denounced the gathering as a disgrace to Queensland and made a special protest against the Defence Force assisting in the desecration of the Sabbath. Again in the report, the inspector writes, "The presence of myself and my men there was purely in the discharge of our duty to prevent a breach of the peace. My only reason for speaking to Mr. Stewart was that I apprehended a breach of the peace, and I have no doubt that had I not spoken to the reverend gentleman, a row would have taken place." In the report, the first inspector suggests that perhaps Reverend Stewart could send an urgent wire to the Honourable Colonial Secretary if they so desired. And it looks like they did, because the newspaper article again states, "Since writing, we learn that the Colonial Secretary Queensland has interdicted Sunday ballooning. Laws around Sunday observance managed to stick around for a long time, especially when it came to using firearms. In the 1950s, a discussion around guns and their use on Sundays was taking place within police correspondence held here at Queensland State Archives. One letter from 1952 states, "I am in trouble again. This time I wanted to take out with me and also use it here at the Brothers College grounds, a 410 shotgun. It's a double-barreled gun." At the time in Queensland, owning this weapon wasn't against the law, unless you were younger than 14 or trying to use it on a Sunday. Again from the letter, "I asked permission from the officer in charge at 4 p.m. today of the local police station to carry it in the car, but he stated that he had not the power to give me any such permission to carry a gun in town limits. Moreover, he quoted the old Act of Queen Victoria of 100 years ago against carrying or discharging a firearm on Sunday." So there are a lot of things that you couldn't do on Sunday, but when we do think of Sundays as an opportunity to rest and reflect, a lot of people might consider fishing a pretty relaxing pastime. The Sunday Observance Act also had a few laws around how people could fish. Found in the Act, we have the unlawful taking of fish on a Sunday by use of any explosive substance or hand grenade. Needless to say, a lot of the activities deemed inappropriate for a Sunday have changed. I think a lot of us would remember shops being shut on Sundays as well. But it is interesting to look back at what a day of rest meant through the years. And I'm sure the fish appreciated Sundays too.